Yay! All right. I am here with a dear friend, Amanda, who is going to saddle up to the Zoom table with a cup of tea and talk about real deal lived sacred rebellion. So, this is kind of like Girlfriend's Guide to Sacred Rebellion on some level, just because of our natural flavor and history. And I'm so glad you took time out of your full life to have this conversation and share it with the rest of the community. So as you enter this space, how do you want to be known to the people for this conversation?
Um, first of all, I love saying my name mostly because I got it back recently. So my name is Amanda Bell. Um, I guess I just want to, I'm excited. So I just want to be known as someone who is really excited about sacred rebellion and living life in one's fullest. And yeah, I think that's how I want to be known.
Awesome. Like a student, a committed student of sacred rebellion.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've known me for a minute, and you've kind of known the evolution of sacred rebellion through its different incarnations before I knew to call it that. And I'm curious, for you, how do you define sacred rebellion? Because everybody's got their own little version.
I so like living one's life to its most fullest or like authentic. Um and I think that the rebellion part comes in when we leave, or at least for me, when I leave my body. So it's like living one's life purpose and living one's life in alignment within the world that we live in.
So how we participate, in essence.
Or bringing alignment between what we are and how we want to engage with the world.
Mhm. So this is like I'm going to do that thing that I do sometimes, which is like, yeah, but I wonder about this. So you said when we leave our body, is there also a version of sacred rebellion that happens within in order to do that stuff out there? And can you talk for a moment about that?
Well, what's coming to mind is, and I just did not do my homework, but I also was trying to think about like what my sacred rebellion's been looking like for my life, and kind of trying to link the different kind of phases of my life with this concept in the moment. And I think about myself in high school, and like my favorite things to do in high school were to go to the thrift store. There was a thrift store that had like lots of really awesome vintage clothes. Like it must have been near a retirement home or something. So my favorite thing to do was go to a thrift store and then the Walgreens that was next to it and buy hair dye so that I could like give myself highlights. And that at the time, I was really connected to something like my authentic self, because I was just sort of like going about the world in a way that I really didn't register as much of like how I was being perceived. And then, I transport myself into my life now where I'm coming out of a 10 plus year marriage and kind of looking back and seeing the ways in which I like molded myself and tried to fit the context for various reasons. And so it's helpful to look back to that like high school age Amanda to be like, okay, she was just like in her element at that moment. Like I wore rope shoes that would get wet when it rained and my feet would be soaked. So I think that there is like iterations of kind of coming in and out of what is truly oneself and how we negotiate that with the world.
Yeah. So you're speaking of it in terms of it's got a real reclamation vibe. And this is something that comes up often in these conversations is there's this moment, it's not a moment, it's many, many moments of like reckoning and realization and disheartening awareness of like, where did I go? And then we find these touchstones to look back to and go, but there I was. I was me then with the world and in my relationships. And then that's when I would say the sacred rebellion as a daily practice comes in of like, okay, what the fuck am I going to do about it? Because I got lost. So how have you traversed that? Because you mentioned falling into, like so many of us do, especially those of us who identify as women, that like unconscious molding of self to the world. And then when you realize, uh-oh, I did that thing, like how are you negotiating that uncomfortable point of awareness in your life?
It's funny that you asked that, because as you were kind of like recapping, I was like, oh, and now that's a thing that I feel like I do almost on a daily basis of like oh shit, like, okay, I've got to show up in this meeting this particular way. And I'm so lit up by how pissed off it's making me, but I have to like not be so pissed off about it. I think it's a continual process. It's, even I'm taking a breath, right? Like,
Which you make light of that in that moment, but that is the practice.
yes, exactly. Because it's like I am an excited person. Like there is something about my whole being that just wants to jump around. Like when we started working together, this idea of pink polka dot possibilities. Right, exactly. But what I have learned and what I have become very passionate about is, like, even my face is tingling right now because I'm so excited, but is to take that excitement and like take it down a notch and like go be curious about it for a little while and, be quiet and let it kind of wash over me in a way that it's not controlling me. So that I am more in alignment with something like a divine or a more sacred way of going about the world.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said about the pace of doing life. And it's this really fine tuning practice of, we're not dialing down your energy, right? I'm not hearing that. It's that you're drinking some of your own medicine rather than discharging all of that energy to the world in this frenetic way. Like you're taking a moment, breathing you in to know what you need to know. And then it's got this real quality of like consciously channeling your energy rather than just kind of popping it off everywhere and discharging it, because then you don't get the wisdom from it. So it's, a lot of times I talk with women about how we get small to feel safe in the world. We get small to feel liked, all that kind of stuff. And I want to really clarify, I think that I'm hearing you say that's not what you're doing at all. It's a very conscious practice.
Well, and what really feels true and important to me, and one of the reasons why I feel very passionate about this and wanting to interact with others about it, is that it is about becoming more empowered in the power that I have.
Ooh, I want to like underline and highlight that and be like, yes, that it's an authentic, and in my woo language, of course, I would say it's a divine sense of personal power. I love that. Exclamation by Cattail.
Yes.
I hope it popped that screen up for people, since we're doing so that they can see the cattail come across your screen.
Yes. Yes. Speaking of empowered power, she just kind of.
And cats don't care. Cats are a great example of that. They're like, I'm doing me. If anyone would like to join, welcome to the show.
Yes, exactly. But I'm trying to think about what I was saying, because I think the irony is that I was dispelling a lot of my power because I thought that that's how I needed to yield my power, or wield my power, not yield, wield my power in order to make the world more in alignment with what I care about and how I want to have an impact. But I that's the rebellion too, because I feel like those are the ways that I've been conditioned in thinking that like I need to be afraid of myself essentially. And not sit with myself in the intensity. Like I am not always excited to acknowledge I'm an intense person. Um and it was like trying to like direct that intensity so I could get things done, but it's actually not that way.
Say more.
So I think sort of what you were saying in terms of like channeling my own intensity so that I can see like the terrain of how things are working, right? So like there's no escaping. So one of the things I feel really passionate about is also like the world is the way it is. Like I want to work in the world in such a way that I want to have an impact, recognizing everything I don't like and everything I do like. And that being able to then figure out where to interject or kind of help bring things together is the most magical way that I can be my best self.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm seeing this image of you surveying the terrain, as you mentioned, and then sort of looking for your path rather than surveying the terrain and be like, I hate that mountain and I hate that mountain and that one sucks and I don't want to go there. That one's the worst. And spending so much of our precious energy in that place of reactivity and judgment and all that. And I think that's something in leadership and just our dominant paradigms that we can really get stuck in, and that's precious energy. And we get to have that. We're human, we get to not like things, we get to vote on things internally, but then we can channel whatever it is, sacred rage, frustration, desire, longing, whatever the intense thing is, creativity, and go, okay, where do I want that to go? Because the other just doesn't feel empowering. So,
Mhm.
so what's that practice like for you as somebody who feels big, longs for big vision? You have that like oomph, like so many people in this community. Like you're speaking to your people right now through this conversation. How do you negotiate that in day-to-day, like practical terms?
One of the things that I've had to learn how to do is recognize what is mine and what is not mine. And that can be like a feeling because I absorb lots and lots of feelings, but it can also be um, related to the projects. Like I really care about the work that I do. And I work in education where everything is important all of the time because, of course, the ways that we are impacting, in this case, college students, is important. It's never not important. Um, and there's a sense of, almost always behind urgency that comes with just about every interaction because it's true. But the thing that I've had to learn is what is mine and what is like the systemic status quo that has been named as my responsibility as an educator that is not mine. And that can be like on an individual level, like this person asking me to do something, like, how can I just be, it's like even being asked a question. So it's like, I'm asked a question and I've learned that I have to take a minute and think, okay, is this my question? And if it's not my question, what is the question that I can answer?
Yeah, so it's boundaries and it's being right with personal responsibility. because a lot of paradigm shifters, right? We can sit and we have this meta view. We are like, seems like we're birthed with a meta view, and we see what needs to be changed, and we see the vision for possibility. And I've seen a lot of people be really paralyzed by that and go into helplessness or shame or guilt or whatever and do nothing rather than be able to, like you're saying, I don't know where that saying comes from, of like, you can't eat an elephant in one bite, you have to like take, it's some kind of weird saying, like, but it's imagery wise, that's it. It's like, just, we're not gonna, we'll like kiss the elephant one kiss at a time rather than bite it. I don't know, but that metaphor is never going to be used in my life again at this but it's like the bigness of an elephant, right? Like if you're trying to move something that big, it can feel like it's pointless, and it can feel like you're failing, and it can feel like one person isn't meant to move that, but you can do what is yours. And then it requires a grieving of control and a trust in something or someone outside of yourself, right? I mean, I know I negotiate that all the time as somebody who wants the world to be a much kinder, different place. And so grief is something that I think is part of this. What can you say about that?
I think grief and letting go and recognizing what was I getting out of feeling like it was my responsibility to empower the concept of accountability for the entire world, right?
So the ego stuff is a reckoning with the ego stuff is necessary to stay clean.
Mm-hmm. And then also just wanting to live in a world that feels calm and in alignment and easy, and having an entitlement. Like I had an entitlement like thing where like not having that right this second was something I had to let go of.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I think that's a brave reckoning to be with, to kind of see that in ourselves when our entitlement or our privilege or our, like, I know the right wayness of it, that can, this very self-righteous thing that can come when we're trying to support a shift in the world. That's important to acknowledge, because otherwise if we don't acknowledge it, it gets away from us, and then it starts sullying our work in the world, because we're all going to have that. We're all going to have the shadow parts of being a change maker, whether we like it or not. There's going to be that part of us that at times gets hand on the hips, like, why is it? And then we go, oh, whoa. Now, how does that fit in with what I really believe? And, we've talked about different leadership models before, and this kind of more feminine approach to leadership, which is more lateral than hierarchical, all this stuff. And we have to check ourselves constantly with that, right? Because we're entrained with that old way.
Right.
Deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what is the vision of possibility in the world? If you can like get out your paintbrushes and paint the picture of it, what's your vision that keeps you doing the hard, humbling work of sacred rebellion in your own life? It might be in, the big meta view, or it might be in the way people relate to each other. It might be all of it, but just what's the vision that drives you?
I'm such an Enneagram 2, in that it's like the vision has to do with just living in a world where we all can share communally in the excitement and sacredness of living our most aligned, authentic life. Like there's a certain, I hate the word synergy. It feels too corporate speak, but like just the way that all of the pieces sort of click into piece. It's like that EMDR, you know, like not EMDR, but that thing where people put combs through their hair, the videos, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where like there's apparently these YouTube videos of like people clicking nails. It's like something about like the way that it sounds or feels.
It's really gratifying.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's like that version, and I can't believe I'm using that as an example, but like just the like soothing of the soul. Of course I'm supposed to be doing this, and oh my gosh, I'm doing it kind of way of living. The like on a more global level, it's like believing that we all can feel heard in an organization that feels so, you know, broken and like siloed,
Yeah.
that we can all hear each other and like be in alignment.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting as you say that, I hear the, you know, micro and macro, and so many times we have that vision for community-based experience and empowering community. And if we take it to the microcosm of us, you know, there's a lot of activists who aren't honoring their own internal community, right? So they're trying to do it out here without doing it here. And what I know of you is that you have shown me that you are committed to doing within what you want to do outside of what you want to see, right? Like, and so you've got to, for me, your example of the internet, it's like my mom vacuumed 2 times a day when I was young, and it was because she needed to see those vacuum lines on the carpet. That kind of thing of like, whoo, right? Like that soothing, like I'm just going to brush it all this way. And we do that with ourselves in the way we live. And then we can show up in the meeting, in the advocacy, in the relationship change, in the whatever, more from that place. I don't know if I'm fumbling over my words, but that's one of the things that it feels really important to name is it's always the both and.
Yes, I think, and you know, I am a constant scholar, and I want to learn even more from Adrienne Maree Brown. But one of the things that sits with me constantly is this idea in her emergent strategy of there's only one conversation that the people in this room can have right now. What is that conversation? And just saying it out loud, I realized I extend that even to myself. It's like, how can I be still enough that I can receive the information that I need right now? And you know, I like went on this hike a couple weekends ago where I kind of had that moment with myself without knowing that that's what I was doing. And it was just like I was getting these things right and left, and I like had this like very sacred experience. And I think about it as like ways that we are these like quantum amorphous beings. And I think about it as like a color like spread, you know, in terms of we just, like for me, I insert like anything could happen kind of excited energy. And then I have people who have a very like calm, like feeling to it, you know, and so we're all creating this mosaic that then will create, it's like, and maybe you told me this, it's like, if we just let that kind of tie-dye happen, we get the most beautiful piece of art that we never could have created if we had tried to create it.
Yeah, because when we fall into the dominant way, which is rooted in sameness and control and agenda, it's like we're just swirling blue. You know, we're just like, oh, we're painting blue here today, and we're going to be painting blue. I've decided we're painting blue. Everybody got your blue paint? You know, it's that rather than showing up and being like, I brought the sparkles. What you guys got? That kind of way of doing life, which, as you say, is so much more magical and requires a completely different approach. It requires surrender. It requires valuing presence and connection over control. It's, you know, and power differentials and all of that. So it's this, it's a powerful daily practice. And I know for me, it's what's changed my life tremendously. And I was definitely not always that way. I was of the school. I was conditioned by the educational system to be a good little achiever, to follow the rules, to bring my blue paintbrush, to tell other people they should bring their blue paintbrush, that whole bit. And so I'm curious, as somebody who comes from an academic background, like, how have you reclaimed your conscious rebellion?
That's a good question. I think that, like most things in this life, it's a daily practice. Um, and in a lot of ways, it is making decisions. Like this morning, as an example, I've had my child who is having some COVID fatigue and it's very hard to hold. So I haven't had a lot of time to myself, and I've got two major project deadlines coming up in the next 2 days. And this morning, I dropped my child off and knew that we were talking and knew that I was very dysregulated in here, and just chose to listen to my body and follow my own intuition. So I sat on my couch, I meditated, I drew cards, and then I worked on like a personal project for a little while, and pet this cat who is determined to be in my house. Old Amanda, like old me, and there's still part of her that is very palpable in my life, in my body. It's like, Amanda, you have 2 projects coming up. You've got deadlines, you have data to analyze, you need to put a PowerPoint together. But I stay grounded. My like hard self-care is doing the work to make sure that I can be calm enough to like tell her you're okay. Because then I know following this path, whatever I do for those projects is going to be great and like mind blowing. And sometimes I just want to turn around and tell like this archetypal person who represents like the system and all me, be like, see, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, so leave me alone. Or to just like announce it in a call, to be like, look, y'all, I didn't work this morning, and just get off my back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's urgency is a choice, and I don't say that, in every case, because there are things that are very urgent and there are various levels of privilege and access and all of that. And we often make things we collapse the ideas of urgency and importance. And I think about that as somebody, part of my background was in teaching for a period of time. And so I would be in there with standardized tests. And I remember even at that point in my early 20s being like, this doesn't feel helpful, that every time something's important, we make it be stressful. We make it have a level of pain because it's important. And what I hear you saying is, well, when something's important, I actually know it's important enough to get present and to slow down. And it is, talk about a rebellious act. Like, that is going against the system in a huge way, to say, no, this is really important. So I'm not going to go out of my body and, get my brain into a state where it functions in a dysregulated way, all that stuff that we're so trained to do when something matters. So it's this very big, like, no, sit your ass down. This is important. We're not doing that. We're not going to have a tantrum right now. Because that's what the body is doing in that moment when we're running around and freaking out and feeling all self-important. We're betraying the mission at hand, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like a big part of your sacred rebellion, your personal revolution, is based on being present. And I know that that's a very simple way to capture a very complex practice, but that's what I think I'm getting is, like, I choose presence because everything works better from that place. And when I'm not present, I'm not in my power.
And it's also choosing to be uncomfortable. I think in a lot of ways the past 2 or 3 years, however long I feel like I initiated myself at some point in time and have been on this journey ever since. And it's just been a matter of building my, like, resilience sounds too much of a like word, but building my sense of grace within discomfort. And it's like a daily knock on my ass kind of experience. But it's like when I was in college, I discovered the surrealists. I did art history for a while. And I just remember being like, oh my God, I found my people. And I find that being present and uncomfortable makes my life more like a surrealist painting, which is so fun and exciting and pleasurable.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we start to bring this to a close, is there anything else that you feel called to share, or like something we didn't talk about that you think is really a message that wants to come through about Sacred Rebellion for anyone who's going to watch this video?
That's a good question. I feel super called in general to, so one of the things that I constantly live in the soup of is the exuberant possibility of this world that we're co-creating together. And I've learned to kind of take iterative, like, it's like a pacing, a rhythm. But I am so energized by because I'm a two, and for whatever other reason, I'm so energized by other people's energy around that. And I think about it as like Care Bear Stare or whatever, like kids, there was like Earth, Wind, Fire. I can't remember.
That's
Anyway.
totally what I'm picturing. The rings coming together. Yes. Voltron, another example.
Exactly. My son got Voltron for Christmas, form like Voltron. I just wonder, and I see the fatigue and low energy that collectively we're experiencing in this moment of COVID, racial injustice, political unrest. And like, I just wonder about the ways that we can support each other, and in like smaller, manageable, bite-sized, because I think sometimes for me just getting up and doing my day the way I know I need to do my day is a lift. But knowing that there are people out there like you and others I make up in this collective makes that lift a little bit less. But I think being able to speak my story or others to speak their story is also a big lift. So I don't know. I just kind of am wanting to put out there the question of like, what are the small things that we can do for each other to like Care Bear Stare the hell out of it,
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about how we get to choose our flavor of discomfort. We can choose the flavor of, I'm going to do it all by myself. I'm going to like figure it out we can choose that. We can choose I'm going to just keep squishing myself in this old way. And I'm going to, like, we can do that, or we can choose the discomfort around vulnerability and co-creation and surrender. Like, we get to choose our discomfort, and life is this joyful, amazing, magical thing, right? That's universally hard. It's this like, and I think at some point I just decided, if it's gonna be hard, I might as well have the heavy lifting be for a good cause rather than for some form of self-betrayal or whatever, this like old way. And I think that's what I hear you saying is I need other people to help that lifting feel lighter. And that's a big part of why this community formed is there's all these people siloed trying to change the world and feeling alone and feeling overwhelmed and burnout and all of that. And even just hearing someone's story can be like balm on the wound. Like you talking about going to your thrift stores, I think about if my mom had not forced me to go to the magnet school that I didn't want to go to in middle school, where I got to befriend all of the like super weird and amazing theater kids. If I had not had my like surrealist painting version of life that opened me, I was like, oh my God, I would have been had such a heavy experience because I'm still who I am. I just would have been more invested in pretending without all these people going, or you could do it like this, or we could do it like this, or, so I think like we're just forming this really awesome surrealist painting theater camp, like bring your divine rebellion and freak flag and let's go. Let's just make the patchwork and it gets to be a party while we're doing the work, sort of.
One thing that strikes me while you're talking too, and one of the things I think that is important to me that I guess want to close with, since I hear you trying to do that, is just that I want to do a better job claiming the rebellious, revolutionary nature of the things that I do on like a daily, hourly basis. And in turn, want that for this community. Because I make up, because I think about it as people being like, well, I did anyways, I won't go into a long story because we're closing up, but I know that the things that I do on a daily, minute-wise basis are rebellious and revolutionary, but I struggle feeling that way about them because it's not like feeding hungry children or revolutionizing the education system. So I am calling myself out by being the rebellious minute-to-minute person that I am, because I make up that there are a expletive ton of them out there as well.
Yeah, I like how you refrain from the expletives in a space that I'm holding. That's just very, very fucking endearing, even. Yeah, and I think that's the call at the end of this is what would be possible if we claimed our daily acts of sacred rebellion as being revolutionary, not at the expense of the bigger acts, but in addition to, like, what if we thought ourselves rebels and activists and change makers, everything from what we cook for breakfast to how we talk to our partners to how we engage at the grocery store, like all of that gets to be revolutionary. And I make up that things could be dramatically different if we honored that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Amanda, thank you so much for having this conversation and being so real and being such a great example of what it is to live this as a daily practice. I really appreciate that. That's what I came to you for when I asked. So thank you for showing up yet again.
Always happy to show up.
Awesome. And I have a feeling this community may see more of Amanda. So just, stay tuned. There's a little ... coming at the end of this video. All right.